I'm going to prove to you that you only need 4 concepts in your trading to become profitable and to stay profitable. Number 1, sweep of liquidity. Number 2, fair value gaps. 3, order blocks. And 4, a change in state of delivery. That's all you need. You don't need a daily bias. You don't need all these other extra things. You don't need all these crazy concepts that people are talking about. Those are the only 4 things you need, and I will prove it to you in this video. But before I get into that, I do want to say something. A lot of people that are in this trading community, in this space, obviously are in a pursuit of financial freedom, wealth, getting rich, all these things. And that's totally fine. There's no issue with that. However, let's remember that this is temporary. These things, money is temporary. No matter how much you make, you can't take it with you into the next life. And there will be a day when the Lord Jesus will return to this earth to judge the world and to get recompense and to, save those who are saved and judge those who are not. Paul says in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 9, that those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction, which is essentially saying that this relentless pursuit of wealth, it can ultimately lead you into things that are going to harm your eternity and your salvation and to put it at risk. So please just keep in mind that this money, it's great to have. It's a tool at the end of the day, and it should serve us. We should not be serving money. We should never make money our master. Let's get into the video now. So personally, the highest time frame that I use to trade is the 4-hour chart. On the 4-hour chart, what you need to do is find any 4-hour fair value gaps that you see on your chart. So this is the price action from this week. I'm going to literally show you how you could have used the same model every day this week to be powerful, to make money. So on this 4-hour chart, you see we have this 4-hour BISI, which is essentially a 4-hour bullish fair value gap. And within that, price traded into there on Monday, the 5th. So if we drop down to a 15-minute time frame, so remember, you always want to align your time frames. 4-hour and the 15-minute should be aligned. The next thing we want to find is a sweep of liquidity. Where did liquidity get taken? Here we had a sweep of liquidity here, right? We had sell side liquidity swept in this morning session. And once we had sell side liquidity swept, now, as we know, the market moves from liquidity to liquidity, from sell side to buy side to sell side. So now once we had this sell side liquidity swept, that gave me my bias as bullish, right? Trading in a bullish fair value gap on the higher time frame plus a liquidity sweep on the 15-minute time frame gives me enough to validate my bias. Now, the next thing I mentioned is order blocks or change of states of delivery. What is a change of state of delivery? A series of down close candles that sweeps lows. Once we close above that, that is now a change in state of delivery. So we can see here, this will become a change in state of delivery once we close above it, right? So once we close above this level here, it's now a change in state of delivery. And you can see we do that here, right? The market comes up and we get this close here. So now once we close above it, this now becomes an order block. This now becomes an order block. These series of down close candles becomes an order block. So this validates now the market has changed from sell side delivery into buy side delivery, now looking to target highs. So where would an entry be? Well, we have an order block here. This would essentially be your entry, looking to play long with a stop loss below here, targeting these highs. So with a risk to reward that looks something like this, right? You could have entered here on this retest, stop loss below these lows, targeting these highs, right? When does the market retest it? Well, immediately right after. It's an immediate retest here, and the market then spools higher, and we ultimately do take out these highs as well as these highs here. So London highs and Asian highs. So that was a great trade opportunity there, just utilizing those few concepts that I just discussed. Higher time frame fair value gap, sweep of liquidity, change state of delivery and a retest of that order block / change in state. So on the next day of the week, we have, right, price came out of that 4-hour gap. We traded back down, and now we come down here to what? Sweep this liquidity, right? Again, liquidity sweep. That is one of the things I said that's all you're looking for, right? Or that's something you should be looking for, is a liquidity sweep. We get that here, right? And we also have what? Another 4-hour bullish fair value gap, right? So another bullish fair value gap. We have a liquidity sweep here. If we drop down to the lower time frame on the 15-minute, remember we always want to line up our proper time frame. 4 hours always lined up with the 15-minute, right? So with this, we have a liquidity sweep. This is a very shallow sweep here, but you can see the market does go lower a little bit. We take the lows from the previous week overnight session, and then now that series of down close candles that swept the low, that is now the candle that we're looking to close above to validate a change in state of delivery that the market is now bullish. It has to be the candles that swept the liquidity, right? That opening price of the series of candles that swept the liquidity, right? So now the market sweeps that, and we come up here and ultimately close above here, validating this now as a change in state of delivery / order block. So now we just have to wait for a retest here, right? But sometimes you don't get a retest, but I personally like to wait for the retest. It might come later in the day, but it's always best just to wait for me, because I don't want to enter up here and now skew my risk to reward. So you see we get a retest here. So you could have entered here, right, with our stop loss below here, targeting these highs here, or even this internal liquidity here, right, up here. Now this could be this, you know, again, this is a 15-minute chart, so you have to be willing to stand some drawdown here. And you can see the market does retest. We hold this perfectly, right? Come back up here, right? The market comes back down. We still hold it. And then you can see we spool and come and hit that target ultimately there. So you can see it should be a protected low. Once we sweep that liquidity into a higher time frame, fair value gap plus close above the series of candles that swept the liquidity, that should hold this as a protected low. That's why I'm pretty confident in this. This low should be protected. But if it isn't, that's totally fine. But most of the time it should be protected. So that's that setup. So here we have the next day of this week. This was Wednesday. We have liquidity. Where's our liquidity resting? Well, we have this sell side liquidity here, right? This is sell side liquidity that's resting there. And we have buy side liquidity up here. We still have this 4-hour fair value gap that I outlined earlier, right? So now we want to see a sweep of liquidity and a change in state of delivery, right? So now we have liquidity here that gets taken. So at this point now, the market would need to close above this high in order for this to validate as a change in state of delivery, right? Because this is the series of candles that swept the liquidity, right? This liquidity, these lows were swept by this series of candles. So now that has to be our change of state. So you can see the market does come up here. We invert that fair value gap, right? And then we come up a little higher here, come back down, still no change of state until boom, we get it right there, as well as the retest here, right? So you enter on this retest on this 15-minute change in state, right? With our stop loss, entering here, stop loss below this low, because this is the protected low, right? Now targeting internal liquidity here or here, all right? And boom, the market comes down here, we retest it, and then ultimately you can see the market does spool into our target overnight. And that is essentially that same model over and over and over again, right? We had the sweep of liquidity, we had a change in state of delivery, we had a 4-hour higher time frame fair value gap, and we're targeting opposing liquidity. That is that same model every single time, right? Now let's look at the next day. So what do we see here on the 4-hour time frame? Well, we have what? A sweep of liquidity. This was from the previous day, sweep of liquidity, right? So we want to outline that as our sell side liquidity that we swept. right? We had a sweep of liquidity, a change in state, because this series of down close candles that swept the liquidity was here. And remember, this is a 4-hour change in state of delivery. So this is now a higher time frame change of state. So now we have a 4-hour order block / change in state, which, so now we don't necessarily need a fair value gap because we can use this 4-hour order block and align that 4-hour order block with the 15-minute. So on the 15-minute, you see we still have this 4-hour change in state, which is what this is, right? A 4-hour change in state / order block, which we can now line up, right? We have liquidity here, which we can watch to see if the market wants to sweep that. Right. And we have liquidity here from the overnight Asia lows. Right. So you can see the market then comes down. We form an intermediate low there or short term low there. The market comes back down. We trade into that 4-hour order block / change in state. So you could buy there if you wanted. In this case, the change in state would have to be here, right? If you wait for us to close above these series of down close candles. Why? Because this low got swept by these series of candles. So this now was technically a liquidity sweep. So now if that's a liquidity sweep, then that means that we can use this series of candles as our change in state. So the market does come back down. We retest, and then we do get the close above here, and the market ultimately spools. And you could look to target this liquidity here, resting at the pre-market highs here as buy side liquidity. All right, targeting it here and exiting this position for over 200 points on this trade. So that is ultimately that same model. Right? We see it on the 4-hour, that same model we've been applying to the 15-minute every single day this week. It applied here on the 4-hour. The market comes back, retests that change of state level, and we spool to the buy side liquidity. It's the same model. Sweep liquidity, target opposite liquidity. Sweep liquidity, target opposite liquidity. We did it on the larger time frame. Sweep liquidity, target what? Opposite liquidity. Where's opposite liquidity? Well, we had these highs. Right, these highs from the previous week. That was opposing liquidity on the larger time frame. Right, we had this day sweep liquidity, right, target opposing liquidity here. All right, sweep liquidity, target opposing liquidity. All right, change in state, fair value gaps, order blocks. That's all you need. That's all you need to essentially be profitable and successful in your trading. So all that other stuff, you don't need a daily bias. You don't need all that extra stuff. This is literally all you need. It's a sweep of liquidity, an order block, a fair value gap, and a change of state of delivery. If you can focus on those things, learn to recognize those things, only take that setup, especially if you take it on the 15-minute, you will see success in your trading. Though you may only get a couple setups a week. This was a better week in that there was many setups, but sometimes you might only get 2 setups in a week. Can you still be content with that? That's for you to determine and decide, but ultimately that's really all you need. You just have to be patient and consistent and only execute when you see that. So anyways, that's all I got for y'all in this one. I will see y'all in the next one.